ago, Bill Clinton, former president of America, had to come to Nigeria. What was he coming to do? He was concerned about the plight of out-of-school children. He particularly said, we are sitting on time bomb. Today we are already seeing the time bomb addressing these issues. Some people will say it is from federal, some people will say from the state. Coming as a former governor, I think it is from the states. I say this because of out of experience, sir. Federal government have done everything, a lot. They have done a lot. When we attempted Almajiri school, taking back children, compulsorily forcing them to go to school, it ended with a religious dimension and it died down. They are back to Almajiri streets. They introduced agile program, especially for the female ones. Only very few states, even with the World Bank funds, are bringing counterpart funds. I take a dimension from the last one that we did. Mr. President, you have done your best, even commenting every time about actions on local government funds. Today, we are still seeing a different thing, like they mentioned. At one time, when we were governors, we recommended to the president, we say you must take some compulsion. You must do some compulsory measures. What was the time when he attempted? President Buhari attempted one. When parish funds came, parish, what do they call it? Parish funds came. He made it a priority that all those that have not accessed the UBEC funds in respect to education, in your state, it was, first of all, a priority. They will remove it and access compulsorily for you to go and address those issues. Then the remaining balance, they will tell you, come and collect. Today, sir, we have a lot of certain things, even without parish club. We have subsidy palliatives. We have so much funds going to the states, but they are not addressing the issue of education. Mr. President should also take bold steps to take a decision. Any palliative that is going to a state, and that state has challenges of educational funding, especially accessing SUBE funds, what they will do is to say, okay, first priority, we are taking this to access your SUBE fund. Go and address the issue of out-of-school children. Otherwise, we'll continue to do the same thing. We'll introduce so many measures and it will go in vain. We are looking forward to one day that this country will agree with Mr. President that direct funding will go to local governments so that they will
represent Bayelsa West. Firstly, I want to commend the very thorough work done by our committee that has been presented to us, and also commend the efforts of distinguished Senator Adebule, who raised this as a very urgent matter, and indeed a very serious issue of national concern. Mr. President, general comments and then few remarks on the recommendations. The crisis facing our educational system is at the core of insecurity, is at the core of leadership failure, is at the core of a lot of issues affecting the development of this country. And one of the most important contributions this Senate can make in our national development efforts is to ensure that we get to the root of this. Not just addressing the issue of out-of-school children, which is very important, but also the crisis facing the educational system generally. All of us who went to schools 30, 40, 50 years ago know the kind of education that was available. Available for the rich as well as the poor. There was a time when students from all over Africa and even beyond took pride in coming to this country to attend our universities, primary, secondary, and tertiary. So, Mr. President, as we discuss this issue, let's not limit our contributions only to the issue of out-of-school children. Very important, but we should use this opportunity, in my view, to undertake a comprehensive overview of the crisis facing our educational system. And bearing in mind the fact that, rightly so, in our federal system, the issue of education is on the concurrent list. Yes, it's on the concurrent list. So there's not much really by way of legislative intervention that we can do. Yes, we have a role to play, and which is why in the area of recommendation, Mr. President, I think we should not get tired. We should rise to the occasion and have a conversation with the leader of the executive arm. I suggest that the time has come, if it's not even too late, but it's never too late to try. We should move for a national conference, kind of. Maybe not a conference, but a summit. We need a summit where you have the stakeholders at the sub-national levels. And it will be nice, Mr. President, if this Senate and the National Assembly under your leadership will take the lead in this. Because this issue is at the core of insecurity. For those of us who have had an opportunity to serve at other levels, we know the differences we made by investments in education, by building schools as we did, by introducing even boarding schools for the first time for some of us as I did, by introducing the Tertiary Education Loans Board, which happily, Mr. President, has replicated at the federal level. That's why I enthusiastically supported it. By introducing the Education Development Trust Fund in my state, where a compulsory levy was put, and the various schools, primary, secondary, and making even feeding, even clothing, free in those schools.
30 seconds left.
So, this is, with what we have, we know what investing in education can do beyond putting people in schools, beyond building manpower, beyond creating future qualified, competent leaders. We are also addressing security problems. So my suggestion, lastly, before I take my seat, Mr. President, is that you should lead, have a conversation with the President and address, it's already starting to address it by the Students' Loan Board, which is going a long way in enabling students to access education. But let us have a summit where the governors, who are the heads of the sub-regional levels, will also be there with their own commissioners and policy makers, so that we can formulate a coherent national strategy. And then we can, as Senate President Emeritus said, back it up with appropriate legislation. Right now, there are states, unfortunately, in this country, unfortunately, where even with the monies available in UBEC, they can't pay their counterpart funds to access. This country has a framework for managing most of these things. But look at the UBEC funds. There are some states, incidentally, those are the states that are highly even implicated in the area of communal crisis and insecurity and banditry and so on. Because there's a clear link between investing in education and stability of our communities and our society and our country also. So, Mr. President, I think this is beyond education. It's beyond out-of-school children. You should take the lead and let the President be briefed and the state governors, so that we can all sit down as a country and fashion out an educational system that will work for all of us. Thank you very much.
Sani Bello, representing Niger North. Mr. President, I have listened with attention to all the contributions. But I think under this democratic setup, there must be a change of ideas, and we must have the courage. Mr. President, you were once a governor. From my own little assessment and from what I have seen so far, we can sit here and discuss all the problems. I think we know what the problems are. But I think the implementation is where the problem is. Mr. President, a politician, for example, let's say a governor, for example, would rather invest money in building bridges, roads, something he can show. It's a major problem. Education, investment in education is not something you see immediately. The gestation period for investment in education takes a long time. You can invest in education today, you probably won't see the value until 10 years, 5 years from day of investment. So in our setup, political setup, especially someone that is looking for second term, he wants to invest in projects that he can show immediately. Mr. President, that will not solve our education problem. We must get the courage to invest in education, regardless of what people will say. To give you an example, in Niger State, when I was governor, we have 56 boarding schools. We have schools without toilets, schools without dining hall, schools without fence. You can't get good leaders out of system like this. We all came out of good system. In some cases, we've lost students due to lack of toilets. They have to go to the forest at night to ease themselves, and they're bitten by snakes. So what I decided was to not to renovate, but to start rebuilding the schools, which cost a lot of money, Mr. President. A lot to fence and do toilets, build dining halls, fix their roofs, was costing over $1 billion for each school. We didn't have the money. But thank God we're able to do 9. And if that was a program that continued, government after government, maybe one day. But you see, the maintenance culture must continue. Because if you renovate a school today, because they are children, if you don't keep on the maintenance, after 1 year, you go back to square one. So, Mr. President, in short, this is a very serious problem that I think the federal and state governors need to sit down, forget re-election for now, invest in education. Nobody will see it, but in future, you see it. I can't imagine a school where girls, all girls school cannot go to toilet, they have to ease themselves in front of their dormitory for fear of being bitten by snakes. Imagine the health hazard and the stench smell. So, Mr. President, I agree with all the intervention, but I think our conscience should judge us. Anybody that is in position today, I believe, was in school 30, 40 years ago, where in some cases, even in school, we're giving money for train. So, Mr. President, that's my intervention. I think we need to do more. I think there should be more discussion, roundtable discussion between the subnationals and the federal government. Even the issue of UBEC, Senator Lalong mentioned, is true. Some states have not accessed their UBEC funds for many years. In some cases, when they access, they divert it for something else. So I think there must be a robust discussion between the subnationals and the federal government to address this problem. Thank you, Mr. President.
I looked at it.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I'm alone, I represent Yobe North. Mr. President, I want to make some comments on the recommendations. These comments are of general nature. I believe that the Federal Ministry of Education in Nigeria has no national policy on out-of-school children. Mr. President, the National Council on Education must have a clearly spelled out national policy on out-of-school children. We have 20 million out-of-school children, and in fact, could be more. And this is a huge challenge to not only our educational sector, but our national security, Mr. President. So we should, when we consider the recommendations, we should urge the National Council on Education, where the Federal Ministry of Education, all the states, ministries of education, and the FCT are present to have a clearly defined national policy on out-of-school children. The second thing, Mr. President, in the recommendations is recommendation 5, where that's on page 7, where our committee, and I must commend the committee for a very good job, is talking about the release of funds for dealing with this issue. I think based on what we should know better, we should appropriate. We should not leave this matter in the hands of the Federal Ministry of Education alone. Our committee on basic education particularly should engage. And then in the 2025 appropriation bill, something tangible, something meaningful and reasonable and significant should be made available. Lastly, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we are talking of feeding, the school feeding program. I, from my experience, and of course those who are in the 9th National Assembly, would tell you that that program was abused, grossly abused. Even when COVID kept everybody in their residences, expenditures were incurred on feeding people who were not in schools. That means that the program is prone to abuse and manipulation. So we need to look at how to make it foolproof if we must continue with school feeding program. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
20th March 2024, debated a motion moved by Senator Olariti Idiat Adebule Lagos West on the compelling need to tackle the challenge of out-of-school children in Nigeria, and mandated the Committee on Education, Basic and Secondary to engage the Federal Ministry of Education with a view to paying special attention to the issue of out-of-school children, with the ultimate objective of drastically reducing the number. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, the committee had written interaction with the Ministry of Education, consider and approve a report on 18 July 2024 for consideration of the Senate. The report having been, I wish to refer my distinguished colleague to the page 6 of the report, where we have the committee observation and recommendation. The committee considered the submission from the Ministry of Education and observed that there is urgent need to hit the ground and activate the roadmap of the federal government on curtail the out-of-school children. No tangible action has been taken by the ministry considering the out-of-school children since 2024, notwithstanding its relevance. There is no reliable data to date on the out-of-school children. This deserves urgent attention to tackle the menace. Out-of-school children is a national phenomenon, especially with the viewed form of insecurity, kidnapping, and banditry all over the country, number and status of which varies from state to state. But the focus on tackling it over the years has been on a few states. There has not been synergy or roadmap with the state government on out-of-school children. Our recommendation: the committee recommends that the Senate do urge the federal government to expand and implement the school feeding program to attract attendance of school attendance of children to school and support their health and well-being. Urge the federal government to design an inclusive national policy on education that will energize the national and sub-national government to tackle responsibility and ownership and provide improved security safety of school at their levels. All the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation Agency, community and religious leaders, and all relevant agencies to embark on national sensitization aimed at identifying and enrolling out-of-school children. All the national legislators to liaise with various state and local governments to ascertain accurate data of out-of-school children for adequate planning and funding. All the executive to allocate and timely release adequate funds to the Federal Ministry of Education and other relevant government agencies charged with the responsibility tackling of out-of-school children to reduce it to the barest minimum within the timeline 2024 to 2027 for execution of the Education Renewal Hub agenda of the present administration. In conclusion, addressing the issue of out-of-school children in Nigeria demands constant joint effort of government at all levels, national and state, local government, traditional ruler, parent, development partners, civil society organizations, and stakeholders in education. Ensuring security, improved education infrastructure, enhancing teachers' training, accurate data management, adequate funding, monitoring, and updates. Collaboration with state and local government are all crucial in this regard. The committee therefore invites the Senate to consider and approve the recommendation contained in this program. Thank you, Mr. President.
Reports to take today. The last submission by Governor Bello is a bit scary. Our children are dying because of lack of toilets, and then they struggle to go to the bush even in the night, and they are bitten by snakes. It's not something we should hear in the 21st century, but it's a reality. And that calls to question the activities of the various subnationals, because I haven't seen any primary school that one will say belongs to federal government. There is no federal government primary school, for instance. And over and above that, our committees in the Senate should be able to do more to visit these schools, take pictures, and make periodic reports. The Senate leader, we must have reports from committees. We must have quarterly reports from committees so that we can assess what is going on and build on those reports. If we need to go on retreat, we need to go on roundtable discussions with all concerned stakeholders, we do so. Because I'm aware that in some states, children are sitting on the floor to obtain education, particularly at the primary school level. And there are some states that I saw where children were sitting inside water. Inside water. They carry their chairs they bring in their chairs from home, and then they put inside water because the classroom is flooded, and they sit inside there and they are getting education. So we would like to see such reports, and we would like to debate, and we would like to particularize those institutions, and then we would like to focus attention on ameliorating the plight of those children. I can tell you that unless we do proper oversight functions, it's not enough for us to charter a plane to Sokoto to go and look at the road, the Badagry-Sokoto road. We should also be able to charter a plane to go and look at a primary school in Nyanya or anywhere, but we are not doing that. So it's everybody's fault. The federal government may be doing enough, but if the idea of counterpart funding has become a problem, that those monies are lying waste for over 10 to 15 years, then we may have to think of whether to remove the idea of counterpart funding so that states can access those funds for the sake of our future, because this is our future. Direct correlation with security of the nation, as you pointed out. So maybe we just take two more, and then we go. So we take Senator. You speak last, Chief Whip. Senator Neda, you've been raising your hand. After that, Senator Mongunu, then we close.
Thank you, Mr.